Hello and welcome to the Classical Next podcast, the global platform for the ideas and the people redefining classical and arts music worldwide. I'm your host, David Taylor. Today, I'm talking with composer, show creator, and refugee supporter Chloé Charody. Widely regarded as an artistic entrepreneur as much as a composer, she has forged a new path in classical music by seamlessly integrating the physical language of contemporary circus, the depth of classical music, and the drama of opera within her compositional craft. I first came across Chloé as one of the showcase artists at Classical Next this year, with the performance of her Limbo Sonata for acrobat violinist, acrobat, and piano, which is one of the most unique performances I've seen in years. In this conversation, we dive into the power of combining multiple art forms into one performance. We look at the importance of using arts to highlight the plight of vulnerable people, and we also explore how to develop skills outside traditional classical music education, how to begin creating multi-form works, and the role of entrepreneurship for musicians. Right, that's enough from me. Let's jump in. Hi, Chloé. It is great to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for being here. I was so lucky to meet you at the Classical Next conference this year as the composer and I guess showcaser of one of the most incredible performances that I think I've ever seen, which was the Limbo Sonata for acrobat violinist, acrobat, and pianist. I think it was such a showstopper from people there. It was such an incredible show. So before we even dive into like the whole chat, I would love you to briefly give a description because I don't think I could possibly do it justice as to what the show was.
Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you so much. It's so nice to hear such lovely, kind words about Limbo. Um, yes, so Limbo is a sonata for acrobatic violinist that I composed specifically for the unique skill set of the acrobatic violinist Sonia Shebeck. Um, I think with Limbo, my work is very much sort of about telling the stories that history is writing around us. So stories of resilience, survival, hope. And one such story that I thought was really important that I wanted to tell was the story of the Melbourne Park Hotel disaster, where a lot of refugees were kept inside a hotel room, some being incarcerated for up to 9 years. And I wanted to create a piece that would tell this story of Limbo, but in a very sort of unique way. In a way that sort of also unites my two greatest passions, which is classical music and circus, which sort of seems to define my career these days. And, really being able to heighten the storytelling elements of this really important story that I think must be heard. And so I decided to write the work as a sonata. First and foremost, it's a classical work for classical violin and piano. It's my second sonata for violin and piano. But then to heighten the drama by intercepting it with circus, so joining the two worlds together. And I think there is no greater. There's actually no one in this world actually that could perform this work than Sonia Shebeck, because she has been honing her skills as not only a concert violinist, which she started out as, but also as an extraordinary acrobat, where she unites her disciplines together. And so we actually workshopped this piece together as I was composing it, working out how we could you know tell this story through the music, and then heighten that music through acrobat, the skills actually Sonia has. And then we worked with Josh Fraser, who is also another unique acrobat, and I don't know anybody else actually that could actually perform this work than Josh. So basically, Sonia and Josh, they are Limbo. They are Limbo. And Josh has got a very unique skill set, where he can, you know, ride the unicycle as Sonia, plays on his shoulders as she's playing the violin. And there are all sorts of very daring acrobatic skills that look very death defying, that they make look really, really easy. And the two of them have just really gelled as a performance pair. And when we first premiered Limbo at Jackson's Lane in 2023, I think it was, or 22, I can't remember when it was. I think it's 2022, actually. It was, yeah, December 22, we premiered it. It was a huge experiment because we weren't actually quite sure what was going to work, what wasn't going to work. But they actually went for every single trick in that first show, and it absolutely worked. So I sat there and thought to myself, right, all this experimentation that we've been, trying to perfect over the past several, months it was of workshopping. I thought with those two in the room with myself, really, very much being on the same page, as, both as not only as artists, but also as humanitarians, and wanting to tell this story in the most sensitive way possible. So it was a very unique, unusual result. But yeah, I'm glad you liked it, and we've been quite lucky to have had quite a great reception from the work around the world at all sorts of various concert halls and venues where we've played the work at. So the next stop is Sydney Opera House. So let's hope that works
Incredible.
out. Yeah, let's hope that works. Yeah.
Definitely. I was really surprised to see in a good way that for a room full of people who are constantly seeing performances their whole life because that's their job to go and watch other people's performances, the Classical Next, there were so many audible gasps, people pulling phone out, and genuine surprise and engagement, which I think is, if we can sort of shock people who sort of understandably may become overwhelmed with seeing lots of art, I thought was a
Mhm.
real telling point. You've touched on it a little bit
Oh, thanks.
already. One of my thoughts when I was watching was, how would you even begin to like create a show like this? And you said this idea of like co-collaboration and workshopping. Is that process
Mm.
something different to if you were, say, for example, just doing a purely musical competition? Having circus performance was a different way of working and creating the work.
That's a really great question. I actually think I think it's very similar. Actually, it's very similar because you're working. It's just a different skill set. You're working with new skills. So, and you're working with this sort of palette where you've got people that have such an incredible multidisciplinary set that, and you want to make the most of that. You see, like you want to make the most of what these performers have to offer, and you want to heighten the drama as much as possible, especially seeing as it's a subject matter that I'm so passionate about. um, so I think actually that's a really interesting question. I think it's very, very similar. I would say I approached um, that workshop in the same way that I would approach a string quartet that have no acrobatic skills, if you know what I mean. I would be working. Well, some do. Haven't met me yet. Um, but yeah, it's more a case of trying to make the most of the skills that you have in that room. And it's like it's sort of similar in a way to, like, I produce a lot of and direct a lot of my operas, but I write circus operas, so all my artists are trained in acrobatics discipline like Sonia. So I work with a lot of singers that are also acrobats, and what I try and do is study their skill sets and be really, really sensitive to their skill sets, and want to make sure that I write a piece that enhances their skills and showcases their abilities in the best way possible, always, but always making sure that it is the narrative that is being heightened in this, you know in the performances, really. So yeah, I think that's probably the best way to describe it, is that I will always do my best to try and make sure that I bring out the best of everybody's skill set. You know. So, and
That's really
it's quite, it's also similar because I do a lot of work with disability-led people as well. I'm very passionate about that. And so I've actually got a new project on at the moment called the Delightfully Disorderly Orchestra. And what it is, it's an orchestra of Zen children, and they're all creating their own instruments that are just specific to them. And it's so delightful and it's so disorderly. And what this project is, and all the workshop leaders I've got running this project, is the main aim of it is to bring out the best of every single child and create something that is specifically unique to them. And I actually think that probably is how I approach working with professional artists like Sonia. In her skill set, it's exactly the same approach. So I approach it all the same. Come now, I haven't thought about it, but now you've got me thinking about it. So thank you.
It
Yeah.
must be, in a bizarre way, really helpful to actually have that sort of uniform approach, but it's coming from a place that may then be actually bring more impact to the people that you then work with, and sort of, as
Yeah.
you were saying.
Yeah, I think I think as a composer and a show creator, an arts worker, and whatever I am, I think that's sort of what my position is really. That I see my position is a first of like is a storyteller, but also somebody that has the capacity to bring the people that I believe in, their unique talents to a fore, and provide a platform for it. So, and it's the same with the stories that get told in my work. I'm a very active human rights activist, very active, so active it nearly kills me sometimes, but it's fine. So it's totally fine, I'm still here. And so I use my platform to tell these stories in the best way possible. So it's kind of like a sort of a melting pot of artists with really unique disciplines, and it's a melting pot of people with really important stories that need to be heard if we as a human race are going to somehow evolve and get out of this fucking muddy quagmire we're currently in right now. So yeah, it all, it's, I suppose, it all connects, doesn't it?
Very much so. I would absolutely love to dive into the impact on the humanitarian side of your work, but before we do, I just wanted to roll the clock back a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, Thinking of like us as musicians and people, we have this training process that we go through. I imagine circus wasn't really an element of standard music education. How did you sort of begin exploring and creating music shows and including things like acrobatics and circus? And what was that journey like in developing all of these skills?
Do you know where it started? It started when I was probably like at my first year at uni, when I was like, I don't know, 18 or something. And I just wanted to, I'd always gone to see classical concerts, always gone to the opera. I was quite sort of active, and I come from a socio-economic background where I had access to going to see concerts. And I was just, I just wanted to be like blown away, not just by the music, because I feel like, there's so many recordings of, pieces of music that I can just put on and listen to and get that same buzz that I would see in a concert hall. Do you know what I mean? That this is me personally speaking. I'm not saying this is for everybody, but this is me personally speaking. And I wanted to create something that sort of gave a whole new life to a genre where people, especially young people, were starting to kind of fade away from it, And I was actually one of those people because I'm a huge fan of classical music. Obviously, I'm a classical composer. I have been a classical composer, obsessed with it since and possessed by it since the day came into this world. Um, and so, but I also got the fact that it just wasn't appealing to so many people. I got it. I got it. People would much rather go and see like a pop concert where there was like all this lights, all of this action, and there was like so much going on, and it just felt more relevant to that demographic. Whereas if you have it's like, this barrier between the stage and the audience member where there is such little engagement most of the time with classical music, so often there is this fourth wall. And it feels like that barrier is what alienates a huge graphic demographic of people that otherwise would appreciate that music. So I think for me, it became like kind of apparent that if I was going to produce my work, and I was only ever going to produce my own work, and I still am the only one that does it. No one else will. No, I don't really. I wouldn't go anywhere else. Um, I want to go and see a concert that like blows me away in so many different aspects and plays on so many different senses. And I remember going to see like a Cirque du Soleil performance when I was about 18 or something. And that kind of did it for me. I was just like, my God, Like, and the music was fantastic as well. And I was like, holy moly, I was like, there is just like this spectacle is just so extraordinary, and the virtuosity in the movement, virtuosity might not be the right word for it, but you talk about musicians and they're playing their virtuosic playing, and it's like that same skill set applies to these extraordinary acrobats. And so it just sort of dawned on me that the two could kind of come together in the same world. And so I just started putting on concerts where, I remember putting on concerts in bars and in clubs where I would be working with other classical musicians, opera singers, and Sonia, who came in when I was in second year. And we started working together, and, we both were all on the same page. And so we started putting on these concerts with my music. And then we would have like the Aussie pole boys come and perform with us. And then we would have like we'd have these pole dancers, and then we'd have these acrobats, and it was just such a beautiful combination. This was like 20 years ago, and no one was doing it back then. Everyone's doing it now, but no one was doing that back then. So certainly not in Australia. Everyone's doing it now in Australia, but when we started experimenting with that, no one else had dared. And so, and then it just sort of grew from there. And then Sonia just started like expanding her skills in acrobatics and movement. And I remember I wrote a circus opera in 2010 or 2009, and it played on the West End of London twice. And that was like really where I kind of had this sort of international platform where I was able to bring in, international artists for the first time to try and experiment with this new genre. I mean, I must say, I didn't really like the production so much. People had nice things to say about it, but I was like, no, this is just the beginning. There is so much work to be done. And so every new piece I've composed since has just been an extension of that. And, Sonia now has this entire classical orchestra who all are almost as extraordinarily gifted as Sonia, as not only world-class, classical string players, but also as acrobats. And they're taking my concerto for violin, fire, and acrobatic orchestra, Tale of the Firebird, which I wrote for them in 2019. And they're taking that to Edinburgh this year. So it's going to play like every day of the festival. I don't know how they're going to do it, but oh my God, somehow they will. And that to me right now, we're at the top there. I'm just not quite sure how much further we can go with it right now. The show is hectic. I mean, it is just, insane. It is insane. And Sonia's the one and the orchestra that have produced this work. And we did it back in 2019 at City Recital Hall for Vivid Sydney, which went really, really well. And it was so like great. It was a really, really great performance. But now Sonia has injected it with like Sonia speed. And now it is this explosive work. So yeah, I'm not quite sure. I keep saying every time I write a new work, it takes it to new heights, new heights. I just don't know if at Firebird, where we're going to go after this one. I think we're kind of right there right now. So maybe I write another one for them, and we just they will stay at that level. But they are all just so unbelievably talented. It is sickening. Yeah.
I think a lot about the power of having very good collaborators in there.
Oh man, it's all about collaboration. Like this only works with collaboration. Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
was thinking as you were talking the way through there that when I first saw Limbo, I was thinking it was such an unusual thing to see of like acrobatics and music, and this is so, forgive the sort of term, but really bizarre to see. And then going, well, why is it? Because like ballet is exactly the same thing of incredible physical feats put with classical music, but that's then something that feels very the quote unquote the norm within classical music. So it doesn't
Mm.
necessarily be something that is so outside of our sphere. And it's great to hear that in Australia there's such a burgeoning world of both acrobatics music, but also pole and other cross collaborations as well.
It sort of is. I think the I'll just sorry, I didn't interrupt you there, but I think
No,
the thing that's I'm finding that I don't go and see these concerts because it's very much people just using circus as a backdrop. So there's a huge difference with what we're doing, where it's the uniting of the two disciplines completely, right? So they're completely united. When you go and see these sort of classical orchestras playing with an acrobatic ensemble, you've just got the acrobats and then you got the orchestra. So it's just basically like these two separate worlds that are just on stage together performing a performance, but there's no unification. And I haven't seen, besides Sonia's orchestra, I haven't actually seen anything that unites these worlds. It's more like this kind of like token display of let's be innovative. Do you know what I mean? And so I've found like it's not something that yeah, it's a world that, like, I can't really describe it, but I find it is that, if you're going to do it, you've got to do it properly. That's just basically
Definitely.
what I think. Yeah. Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. Well, as part of your role in doing this, you're also the person that has to promote the concerts, but to venues, etc., and festivals and things. Um, so you must have quite an entrepreneurial process in doing so. So one with a work like this that is so unique for many people, and it may be their first sort of touching point of experiencing a work like this. How do you even begin to sell something like this to those sort of people? And then secondly, what do you see as the role of entrepreneurship for musicians in the modern world?
Yeah, it's actually very interesting because the classical music industry are very scared of the work I'm doing, and they kind of don't really want to go near it. And it's the same with Sonia. Like, they don't want they everybody. That's why I actually found quite sort of interesting about the Classical Next conference, right? Is that I'm sitting in a room full of people, full of these people in their business suits that are sort of the top of the orchestras, the top of this and the top of that, all whinging about trying to engage a young audience and trying to be different, do stuff that's different and different and engaging. And I'm sort of thinking to myself, I'm like, but that's exactly what we're doing, and you don't want to bar of it. So it's like I don't know when they're going to start coming round to it, but I find the traditional classical music world won't go near us at all. Like, with a 10-foot pole, it's fine. It's fine because we're doing fine. We have our own path and we're doing our own thing. So it's sort of, in terms of like promoting the work, a lot of festivals, like, there's just it's a lot of really ballsy arts festivals that bring us in. Um, with and I run a lot of concert platforms as well, that should have quite a strong following, and then we perform the piece there. So it's very much actually it's hard to explain it. I would say I would love it if the classical music world would be more open to actually being a bit more entrepreneurial, but I haven't seen it yet. I haven't seen it yet. We've seen, like I was saying before, like this sort of like backdrop of bringing in circus artists to perform alongside the classical orchestras and things like that. We've seen that before, but to actually take classical music into an entirely new realm and on a completely different path and do something really different, they're not ready for that yet. They might be soon. I would like to think they would be, but at the moment, I don't think yeah, my experience, it doesn't seem like they're ready yet.
Potentially $1 million question, but in
Mm.
your mind, what would you see as getting to that point? How do we sort of become more entrepreneurial, or get to where you think we should be?
I just think there's a lot of really stuffy old men in these positions, and I'd say that's the problem. Stuffy old white men that are just like rigid, like set in their ways, unwilling to move. There's your problem. So if we can start filling these roles with younger people that are a lot more entrepreneurial minded, more inclusive, wanting to be a little bit more diverse in their programming. If you can start filling like these roles with people that are a little bit more forward thinking as well, I think we could solve the problem.
Very good point. So a massive change in sort of leadership.
Yeah, I mean, you just
Mm.
see all the guys. There's just stuffy old white men in suits in so many of these roles, and I think they're the problem. Yeah.
Fascinating. So to go back to what you were saying
Mm,
about the impact of your work, and there's
mm.
such a humanitarian element to it, whether it is the plight of vulnerable people around the world, working with people with special educational needs. Do you find that multi-art collaborations are able to tell those stories in potentially more powerful ways than just individual art forms on their own?
That's interesting. I think you can tell them in a lot more in a more unique way, actually. And I think it's because when I wrote the concerto for Limbo, for instance, as an example, the work tells the narrative of this tells the narrative purely musically. So it's got this journey purely on it based on the music that I've composed for it. Um, however, you then listen to the music and then you add the physicality of and you add the incredible sweat and drama you feel from integrating like circus and acrobatics into that narrative, and you combine these two, and then you are shooting to a whole new different level. It's interesting because I think actually that but that unique combination, you couldn't touch it with any other discipline. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you we've even tried doing this with lighting, like really interesting lighting, and it ruined it. It just looked like it ruined it because it has to be it's so raw and it's so it's such a raw piece that adding any additional elements just felt like a token addition. Do you know what I mean? Um so that's really really interesting to really interesting question. That sort of a narrative, when the story is just so poignant and just so real, and it is a real story, and it is an horrifically horrifying story. That story, when you combine it with those two disciplines, the narrative is just and the drama is taken to such a skyrocketing level. But another example, for instance, like one of my circus operas, Mrs. Giggly's Magic School, right? If it just sits as just like the music, it's funny and it's fun. But when you've got Mrs. Giggly, who's also a pole dancing aerialist, flying around on her broom, right? It's like brings it to a whole new different level. And then, but that you need lighting, like you need like, Mrs. Giggly's like, she needs like hectic lighting to make this really spectacular fizzy scene, and make this really exciting world of color and, you know, bonkersness that happen, all the chaos that happens inside her classroom, that all needs everything thrown at it, everything thrown at it. So that is an example where everything needs to work. And that's playing at the Opera House as well this year. And yeah, I've thrown everything at it. Like, I mean, I just don't know what I could. I mean, besides like bringing in live animals, like what I'm not gonna do. I'm just not quite. I've got massive puppets. Like literally everything is in Mrs. Giggly's Magic School. I'm not quite sure how much more I could add to that. There's a point where it's like, Chloe, stop. But because of that narrative, because it is just such a crazy story, and it's for children, and it's to engage, and it's an opera for kids, but and it's like there's literally like poos flying through the whole theater, like so like that, like that sort of whirlpool of different disciplines that works with everything in it. We've even got like flying, like all sorts of things. So yeah, and there's like a slime fight where the kids in the audience just like attack the players with slime. Like, I mean, there is opera singers with slime. There's nothing that I haven't thrown into that, because I am a mother of like three girls, and I just know what makes them laugh. And so
Mainly slime.
yeah, slime and poo. They're not like as soon as you tell a kid that you can like fling poos at people in a show, they'll be like, "Oh, I'm gonna go,"
I'll
bugger
go
the
see it.
story, bugger the fact that there's an opera. They're not interested in seeing an opera. They're interested in going and chucking poos at people. So that's that's that. But that kind of that in that instance, that's what works. Throwing everything at it. But that's a really interesting question actually to think about, which I've gone off a massive tangent, as I usually tend to do. But I hope that answered the question.
Well, the good
Sort of.
news is it allows me to have a tangent to go back a little bit. So this
Yeah,
is
yeah.
going back into the
Mhm.
artistic world. I imagine that when you're doing multiple discipline performances or shows or works, there's a temptation to constantly be adding more and more into it because there's so much more like artistic opportunity. How do you know when to step away instead of being like, I need the fifth unicycle?
I actually, it's like with Mrs. Giggles, I don't know. Like I have to have someone. I literally have to have Sonia to be like, it's enough. It's enough. I'm like, but really? It's like with someone like someone's artistic integrity I trust with my life tells me it's enough now. It's enough. If she ever said there's not enough, I'll be like, okay, bring it. So it's hard to know. It really it's kind of honestly, it's like writing. It's like writing music. It's like composing a symphony. It's like, when does one stop? Like where do I go? Everything is, it's all a blank canvas. As a composer and a creator, it's all a blank canvas. And it's like, how far do we go? You know. So quite often the answer is I have a deadline. So I've got like either the date of the recording has been set and that's when the artists are free and there's nothing else and you've got to just finish it by then. Another option is this is the date the show's opening in the theatre and tickets are on sale. So that those are actually really my parameters. Like,
It's a good lesson.
mm, mm, yeah.
Yeah, I guess it probably shows that you're excited about whatever it is that you're doing, which is
Yeah.
always a positive.
Yeah, I get obsessed with it. So, you know, it totally is all encompassing, you know, for me. Mm.
Definitely. Well, thank you for letting me go back for a second. So we were talking before about the sort of the humanitarian aspects, and for example, that limbo was around indefinite detention of refugees in Australia is not exactly an easy topic.
No.
What do you see as the role of arts in challenging or showcasing and telling these stories? Is it something we should be leaning into more? Should art stay out of this sort of world? What are your views
Mm.
upon this?
No, no. No, no. I mean, art is sort of, it tells the story of our time, you know, and it's also a way of bringing justice, I find, because if you have these stories that need to be told, and in this day and age, with this ridiculous way in which the world has just turned, I find it very, very difficult to get my head around it all. When you're actually telling the story of an oppressed person, I can't even tell you the amount of peace it brings that person. The amount of peace it brings to that person is worth more than anything. It's like a sense of justice has been. It's like a form of justice for them to have their story told, and it's like when I put a piece into a theater, it's I need to sort of expand the audience's collective capacity to feel, because if we and then we can have change. So I am in no way interested in telling stories that are just fiddly stories that are just sort of, you know, flippant stories at here or there. No, I use my time on this earth to compose works that tell the stories of our time that need to be heard. And I'm totally fine to be silenced I'm totally fine with it. And I've been cancelled plenty of places, and I just don't give a fuck, because at the end of the day, it's like my humanity becomes before anything. So, and the humanity in the stories that I'm telling is so much more important than me. These stories are so much more important than my career. They are so much more important than anything. So if I have the privilege of using my talent and my platform to bring this sense of justice and a sense of peace to these people that have been so oppressed, it is to me, that is why I'm here. Mm.
Fantastic. What a sensational point to end this on. I feel bad in a way that I have to wrap up final rapid fire questions to end on, but I think that was such a powerful statement.
Well,
Um,
thanks.
so, just to do a very bad segue then, if you could change one thing in the industry, what would it be and why?
Mm. I would get rid of all the stuffy people in these positions of these positions of power. So I would replace all of that with young, vibrant, um, humanitarianly focused people that actually care about the ills of this world and also care about using the arts to make a difference to humanity, because it has such a powerful the arts have such a powerful impact on people and on humanity and who we are as a human race. And so we just need to replace all the people that are in these like heads of programming and heads of orchestras and all this kind of stuff with people who are progressive. That's what needs to change, without question.
Fantastic. And then finally, what
Yeah.
gives you hope for the future of classical music?
Jeez. People like Sonia give me hope. Sonia gives me hope, actually. Sonia and her orchestra give me hope. Because Sonia, as an artist, she's not, you see her talents and you sort of can't believe that a human being could have these sorts of talents and this skill set, but she's also about sharing that talent. And she's also about progressing classical music. So she wants to share her talents with a younger generation to continue this new path that we have spent so many decades developing. So I think my answer is actually Sonia and her orchestra, the Freestyle Orchestra. That's actually my answer. That's really big and bold to say that, but if you, I'm honestly telling you that's how I actually feel.
I'd like to thank Chloé for joining me and thank you for listening. If you have any thoughts on today's episode, or if there's someone you think I should be talking to for the show, you can find Classical Next on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, or just get in touch through the website. And if you found the show useful, please do subscribe and share it with your colleagues. I'm David Taylor, and I'll see you next time.